A big welcome to the Nick Elston Show, hosted by inspirational speaker and transformational speaking coach Nick Elston. This show brings you the people who inspire, motivate, educate, and engage in all walks of life, sharing their insights and experiences honestly, unfiltered, and off script. So, without further ado, let's get stuck into today's show.
Hey everyone, a big welcome back to the Nick Elston Show, Season 4, Episode 17, and the final episode of the season. And what a way to do it. We have an amazing guest to bring you today. We've had kind of 3 weeks to build up to this episode as well, having sunned myself in Cornwall. Look, I'll be honest, I'm recording this pre-holiday, so sunning could be really wishful thinking, but let's say that I did have 3 weeks of sun. But today we have the wonderful Mike Jones. Big round of applause for Mike. Woo! Hey.
Hi, Nick.
How you doing?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
We are all better happy, right?
Well, yes, we'd hope so, wouldn't we?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So before we go into, I know we're going to go down lots of different rabbit holes today because we have, when we're off camera, let alone when we're on camera. So before we go into all of that, tell us who you are, what you do, where you're from, that kind of stuff. Think you're on the chase, that kind of thing.
Oh, God, I'd be very nervous if I was on the chase. My name's Mike Jones. I'm the founder of an employee engagement and wellbeing consultancy called Better Happy. I'm 35 years of age. 34, coming up to 35. I live in the West Midlands of the UK, a little town called Droitwich, next to Worcestershire. Well, in Worcestershire, which was made famous by Shrek 3, where they couldn't pronounce.
Or the sauce.
Where they make Worcestershire sauce. So whenever you go travelling, that's what people... Where the sauce is from. Yeah, correct.
To be fair, yours is probably a better example because of the global audience thing. That Worcester sauce may not be an American thing, I don't know, but we'll see. You carry on, sorry. I'm going down rabbit holes already.
I've been in America and I know the sauce.
Cool, that's good.
Was that it? Was there anything else you wanted?
I think that's it for starters, just to give people a flavour for what you're about. So kind of our paths have crossed through the wonders of LinkedIn. And actually, and I've said this before with several guests, actually, for all the challenges over the past couple of years, it's also thrown a lot of silver linings my way as well. And it's given me a real chance to kind of build my network with people that do amazing things in a same or similar space to where I am. And as the people on the show know, we have a really diverse audience, given the diverse ranges of places that I deliver to. I'm not solution focused, I'm not fixed. Therefore, my responsibility is to surround myself with amazing people that do that kind of stuff. And you are absolutely one of those. Got a great reputation, a great vibe as well. And actually, you're just a really down-to-earth guy, which is cool because that's how you kind of portray yourself online as well. It's always a bit of a disappointment sometimes when people are massively different to how they're online.
Yeah, I wouldn't be a very good actor.
Yeah, so we've worked out what you're not good on the chase, not good as an actor. We are going to get into what you are good at very, very soon. But I guess the thing that really intrigues me is how do people get to the place that they are now? So give us a potted history of Mike Jones.
Yeah, cool. So I started my professional career in the British military. So I was a bit of a disenfranchised youth, I would say. I didn't really know what to do myself after college. Drank a bit too much, got in a bit of trouble, kind of didn't know what I wanted to do in my life, and joined the military. Spent 5 years as an army intelligence analyst, which makes me sound probably more intelligent than I am. I was attached to the special boat service, so I did 2 back-to-back tours in Afghanistan with them, and basically throughout that career it was good. It was obviously very exciting, and I got to learn a lot about the world and have a lot of life experiences. I also had a very bad relationship with some senior management towards the end of that job, which led me into depression, essentially. So that's actually, it wasn't going to Afghanistan that made me leave the army. It was a poor relationship with management, which I think is fascinating, isn't it? You know, what's going to make you leave your job? Get life-threatening situations or a bad boss, and the bad boss weighs more, in my opinion. So did that, came out of the army. I was 25 then, and I was like, what do I do in my life? Like, I've had the career, I've had the money. You know, you've got a lot of money when you're in the army. I was a corporal, so pretty decent wage, no outgoings. I was a young lad, tour money as well. So I'd had all the stuff that I thought was going to make me happy, and I felt unhappy, and obviously I had a bad relationship with the manager. So I decided to, very cliche, put on a backpack and get a one-way ticket to Thailand and not come back for 3 years. And throughout that 3 years, I lived on monasteries in Thailand and Nepal. I taught kids English. I worked on fishing boats off the south coast of Australia. I don't know how many books I read throughout that time. I read a book called The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama, which was like a pivotal transformation point in my life for me. And then decided towards the end of that time that I was a more realized human being, and I wanted to come back to the UK and help people be healthier and happier. I spent a lot of time with people that have got a lot less than us and realized that actually a lot of the time they're a lot happier than we are. I'm just reading a book at the moment called about the lower classes, and it talks, the doctor that writes the book talks about how he's served throughout the world, Latin America, Africa, and the UK, and that by and large the most unhappy, emotionally strained and spiritually strained people are people in the underclasses of the UK, which I thought was really fascinating. Something that I saw whilst I was traveling, like living in places where people got nothing, but they're healthier and happier than us a lot of the time. So that kind of opened a new ways of thinking for me. Came back to the UK, decided I wanted to help people be healthier and happier, which is very fluffy. So I started.
We're all good with fluffy on here. We're good with woo-woo. We're good with the other side of things too. So we're all good. We're fine.
This is the hard thing about business. You know, most of us start as idealists and we're driven by passion. So we're like, well, the passion will get me there. But what you find out quite quickly is no, it won't. You need to have a bit of a plan as well. So I started a gym, was my first business, a community gym, a CrossFit style gym. I had that for 5 years. Absolutely loved it. Changed loads of people's lives. Grew it to a very healthy business. Had a team of 5. But my experience here is that I was working myself into the ground, you know, on the passion tablet. And I had 2 weeks holiday in 5 years. And as COVID kicked in, I was just so burnt out, and I was just like, I need to get out of this. But about 2 years before COVID, I'd started doing corporate workshops and decided to rebrand into Better Happy. And luckily that's gone from strength to strength. And now that's what I do full time. I work with businesses to work on engagement, work on well-being, and also work on sustainable performance. So like, yeah, you're really passionate about what you do. Are you doing it in a way that's sustainable? So that's my story in a nutshell.
Love that. And so many rabbit holes to go down already. So I guess the first one I want to explore is this, you mentioned it right at the beginning, about your experiences of being kind of in the frontline services in terms of the military, and also but the challenge was actually your relationship with the management kind of thing. So do you think that's a real kind of magnified example of this problem we have with perspective? Because you hear a lot of people say, well, who am I to worry about this when this guy's in Afghanistan with all this going on? Actually, you found that easier in that sense to deal with than you did with actually the relationship challenge with management. Perspective can be a real problem, can't it?
Yeah, I think we simplify things, and I think we look at things through this big lens, and like, you know, why should I be stressed when there's people that have got less money than us? There's people that live in poverty. There's people that are in war-torn countries. But essentially, at the core of all, we're all human beings, and there's certain things that, regardless of who we are or what our unique personality traits are, or our histories and our traumas might be, we all kind of have these same fundamental needs. And, you know, I think when you step back from everything, you know, does a person have positive relationships? Even if they're an introvert, you know, do they have positive relationships? Do they do things that make them feel meaningful? Have they got people that make them feel good about themselves? You know, that's the kind of the core of human life. And if that's not there, it doesn't matter how introverted, extroverted, how rich or poor, or how high or senior or junior in a career you might be. If you haven't got those basic components there, you're going to suffer. And actually, I'd say that those basic components, like social interaction, good relationships, feeling that you're valued, having meaning in your life, being healthy, I think they are way more important than where you live. Like I said, and I'm not trying to downplay poverty here, but like we talked like there about me being in Afghanistan, which is life or death situation, high stress situation. But it wasn't that was making me deeply unhappy. It was the lack of these fundamental human requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of that, I guess, do you feel sometimes it's the kind of the pursuit of happiness which can cause more challenges than positive? And just to qualify that, in case that seems nuts, I very often find it, especially kind of amplified by social culture, by social media, for example, you can find actually that pursuit of happiness can cause a lot of damage, because we believe that our 0 point should be happy. So we expect to be happy all the time, and then we don't deal with the negative stuff so well, but we're always chasing something which is almost slightly out of reach all the time. And for somebody that's had kind of mental illness for a long time and mental health challenges around that, actually my 0 point is okay. My 0 point is peace of mind. And actually, if I'm at that point where I wake up and I'm okay, that's really good for me. And that means that I appreciate the happiness when it comes. I can deal with the negative a lot better than I used to. But do you feel that kind of culture is pushing people to that belief that everyone should be happy all the time? They're just continually sharing their spun version of the truth all the time.
I think that life should be the pursuit of happiness. I think that in Western culture especially, we don't understand what happiness is.
Okay.
So I think we should all be focusing every day on moving towards being happy. But I think in Western culture, our fundamental understanding of what it means to be happy is incorrect, which means that we are chasing the wrong thing.
So in sense of they're attaching happiness to an outcome or a product or something.
Yeah, well, and this is, I started to have some kind of like real paradigm shifts when I lived kind of in the East as such, and I studied a lot of Buddhism and studied a lot of spirituality and psychology. And happiness does not mean feeling. I almost think we need to rebrand the word. I actually had this conversation with the marketing guy when we started Better Happy. I was like, I want to rebrand happiness, because the truth is life is about being happy. But what's not accurate is that this belief that being happy means that we feel joyful and splendid all the time. That's an incorrect. What's the word? That's an incorrect definition of the word happy, because
chemically addictive as well.
Yeah, exactly. Happiness is actually about more in line with a deep inner sense of contentment and peace. And contentment and peace, part of that is being contented and peaceful when you're not feeling happy. It's accepting that is part of that you're part of being a human. It's hard. It's a difficult conversation because our understanding of the word happy is I'm smiling, I feel great. So that's how we use the word. But my understanding of the word, and I still use it in that context, which makes it difficult, but my understanding of the word is that to be happy, we need to live a meaningful life. We need to feel valued in our life. We need to have meaningful connections. We need to accept that we don't feel joyful and pleasurable all the time. We need to accept that feeling a bit down, feeling miserable, feeling depressed is a natural part of being a human, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that's what, in my opinion, being happy is. So when I feel like I've actually considered rebranding the business, because I think that people think when they see the name Better Happy, they're like, well, they just want to make our staff happy. And you're like, we do, but that's a different understanding of what you think happy is, because we've got a problem at the moment with businesses and Western society, I think, where we are so fearful of mental health that we don't want to put any pressure on anybody. And that just leads to us being more unhappy as well. So
yeah, I mean, that's fascinating. I mean, and it's interesting that the way that you describe it and the way that I've taken it, so tell me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of like, so happiness is kind of like that happy is a code or a playbook. Actually, it's a set of ethics, maybe values. Like you said, it's giving you the purpose and everything else that you want along the way to get to that point or to achieve that point. Is that right? Am I on the right track there?
You can think about it like that. It's ultimately this inner peace that even when you're going through the rough and the horrible parts of life and you're feeling those negative emotions, you still feel a sense of contentment and that you're kind of on the right path. I think that's what happiness is. It's not the it's not the presence of positive emotions and the absence of negative emotions. What I went into is things that I think contribute to that, which is what you're referring to as the kind of playbook, the philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, interesting, fascinating stuff. Actually,
So like somebody's happy. Let's say Nick's deeply happy. I know I would say you're more happy than most people I know because you're so full of meaning and passion and value. And to say that Nick's a truly happy guy, I mean, we're talking about spiritual enlightenment almost, which is a very rare thing. But when we say that, you know, he's close to being like perfectly happy, which isn't what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah,
you know, it's but what tells me about you is that even when you're going through the tough times in life, even when you wake up and you feel like crap, you've still got an inner sense of acceptance and a level of peace and contentment. Even when you feel crap, so it's like, I feel crap, but that's okay.
Wow. Love that. I'm actually going to start making notes because I'm forgetting all the rabbit holes I want to dive down now. Always be honest. So the first thing, terminology. I think terminology is huge. And as you said, you've already mentioned that, kind of called it out, actually, that mental health is, and I've said it before on the show, and it's so important to recognize this, that mental health is always used in the negative here, to a lesser degree elsewhere, but here in the UK especially, to the extent that people will say, Nick, I have mental health. Like, yeah, absolutely you do. 100% of us do. Whether it's good or bad, that's a whole different thing. But that negative association actually defines the culture around mental health. So it becomes a diagnosis, not a state. And I think that's quite a dangerous place to be. And like you said, especially at a time where people and organizations are being really sensitive around this issue as well, understandably, I guess. But it also suffers the same fate as other big triggers. So like change is one of those things. We have a real negative association with change. But every single client I work with on a corporate level in the UK, their number one biggest anxiety trigger is change. Always, like without exception, whether it's retail or hospitality, whatever industry they're in, because we automatically assume change is going to be negative. Do a skit in the talk where I'm like, right, show of hands. Who? I said your boss wants to see you in the office straight after this. Who thinks, great, pay rise? Of course you don't. You think, I'm out of here. I'm going to get a big box, put my stuff in.
But I'd argue not even that we automatically assume change is going to be negative. I'd argue just fundamentally as human beings, we're wired to be fearful of change because it might be negative, it might not be negative, but it's definitely going to be something we don't know. And I think the world changes.
Primal kind of thing kicking in. Do you reckon is that primal kind of like hardwired to look for danger and fear and not being one of a tribe? And
what's the two main things that the human brain has done throughout most of our existence on this planet? Its two major roles have been to make sure that we're fitting in with the tribe, because when we're hunter-gatherers, if we don't fit in, we die. So aggressively compare ourselves to those that we're around, which used to be 10, 30 people, is now millions of people that are giving a false impression of what reality actually is. And the second one is to look for danger, because again, that was useful for most of our time on this planet. It's still useful now. You know, if we didn't do those things, we'd probably not be in a good place. But obviously the opportunity to do that is far wider now, and the potential outcomes of what we're having to weigh up are far wider as well. So it used to be, if I go around that corner, there might be a bear or it might be a wolf. Whereas now we can sit here and start thinking about completely just mentally created constructs of danger. It might be the economy could collapse tomorrow, and I might be out of house and home, you know, and I'll get all of the negative things around that. And this is a challenge, because if, you know, again, it just happens on overdrive. It's comparing, it's worrying, it's comparing, it's worrying, and if we're not aware of it and we're not kind of able to create a healthy relationship with it, and if we just wish it wasn't there, which is never going to happen, then we end up moving towards society where it's like everything's more extreme. There's more things to think about, more things to worry about, which creates a breeding ground for more poor mental health. Correct. What's our emergency response? I don't want any of that stuff. Don't put any stress on me. Keep me away from any potential changes. I don't want to do that. It creates anxiety. I don't want to do that. It creates stress. I just want to stay down here in my safe little zone. But the irony is that by not exposing yourself to stress or anxiety or danger, you end up with poor mental health.
Yeah, and there's a really fine line, isn't there, between kind of anxiety and depression, and certainly from my experiences, and like I said, that be interesting to hear your experiences too on this, is that very loosely, of course, but anxiety was a thing that got me down. Depression was a thing that kept me down, in a very, very generalist kind of statement, but absolutely true in my experience. And one of those reasons actually was because of that, to cut off feeling hate, you cut off feeling love, to cut off feeling bad, you cut off feeling good. So what you end up doing is living in this kind of self-contained numbness of your own creation. You live under a haze. And I think people don't really understand this, I think, and they find it difficult to understand if they've not experienced it. But when you look at things like breakdown or mental illness, like pain is not the worst thing you can feel. For me, the worst thing was feeling absolutely nothing at all, actually not realizing what normal looked like, or not realizing how you should react to certain things. For me, that was the most difficult part. And it becomes that construct that you're mentioning, that you start to put these boundaries around you to kind of protect yourself in the same, in a way. But what you're doing is excluding opportunity and support as well.
Do you think that your, and obviously there's a few ways to answer this, but do you think that it's your anxiety that led to your depression, or do you think it's the way that you handled or didn't handle the anxiety that you were suffering that led to the depression? So if the anxiety wasn't there, are we saying that the anxiety needed to not be there, or that the way you chose to deal with it?
Well, again, as we know, it's a very kind of subjective, unique experience for everybody. But for me, that for many years I never had a depressive element. It's only actually in the more recent years that I had that. But I think that what spurs it is that when you're used to kind of, not to say is that hope or the lack of hope, which kind of fuels us all or can take us all down. And I think for me, with that kind of combined experience of decades of mental illness, decades of mental health challenges, that feeling that these things were never truly going to go away. And I think, in the spirit of honesty, combined with the pandemic and lockdown, like you said, more kind of global events, that isolation actually forced me into that position where actually you get into that zone where you start cutting off things again, and you do lose sight of what normal is. I couldn't work out what normal was. How do you normally interact with people? And all the way through, obviously, like we all do, in whatever we do, we're kind of delivering. And I'm as honest as I can be, but sometimes the awareness isn't there at the time, to be completely honest, because you don't realize yourself. So I'm always very open, even on professional platforms like LinkedIn. If I'm struggling, I'll tell people I'm struggling. But what I found was, as lockdown went on, it was kind of like you don't realize how much you're carrying until you stop. So as soon as the world opened back up again, I started to feel like I didn't want to be part of that anymore. I kind of felt like, and this is interesting, I've not spoken about this in this depth before, so the ties have been turned. I've never been asked the questions. But what I found was that there was a conditioning impact of actually inside safe, outside not safe. So there was and I think our stay home, save live thing certainly had that impact.
It's highlight, isn't it? It's like,
yeah, exactly. And that was that daily kind of 5:30 reminder that was the case. But it was a bit deeper than that as well, because actually when you cut out external influences, actually it becomes a comfort zone in that sense. So we all know that comfort zones are uncomfortable, but it becomes one. And I think that there's a real difference between knowing something and even speaking about something and then actually taking your own advice or applying it to yourself. And what I found was coming away from a lockdown, that's when the depressive element kicked in. So it came a lot later than anxiety for me.
There's so much there. I think you kind of throughout your own story brought it back to that context of there's all this more than we've ever seen before, stress, anxiety, which is a fact. And then we've got the option, which we never had before, to put ourselves into a comfort zone and to kind of legitimately survive without really having much impact with other people. That's a new thing. Yeah, that's never existed before, because that used to mean death. Yeah, so there's this new opportunity, this new option for us human beings to, instead of encountering all this new increased level of anxiety and stress that's floating around, and change that's floating around in the world, I could put myself in this place where I've got limited interaction. I can kind of build my own little ecosystem and stay down here. And I think that's a problem, a challenge and a new thing that we're experiencing on a global level.
This show is sponsored by Forging People, Transformational Speaking Coaching. Are you truly being heard in life, in business, in education, even at home? Your ability to deliver any message with clarity, power, and emotion will have an ultimately defining impact on your success as a speaker, leader, and influencer. For more information, contact team@forgingpeople.com. Are you truly being heard? It's time to find your voice.
There's a couple of things. Number one, I think you kind of highlighted what I said again, which is we'll choose the comfort. Of course we will. What would you rather do? Go and make yourself uncomfortable and expose yourself to all this challenge and heartache and hard stuff, or would you choose comfort? And everyone's going to say comfort. Nobody. That's why it's so important to have goals, because without goals, we make ourselves comfortable. But again, the irony is that the comfort over time leads to depression and poor mental health. So that's the irony of it. And it kind of comes back to where I am really. And it's like, if you think about the hunter-gatherers, which is, if you took human time and put it on an arm span like that, and that's our time that we've been alive, from my fingers here to my wrist we were hunter-gatherers, and then from my hand on that scale, probably less actually, it's like 10%, well, less than 10%, 5%, we've been agriculturalized and we've learned to live as tribes a bit more. And then modern technology in the times we live now is like less than my fingernail. So it's, most of our time we've been hunter-gatherers, and all of the dangers and anxieties and stresses and worries were still there. You can argue that a lot of the dangers are worse, but we didn't have the option to avoid them. We had to confront them. So we were forced to deal with the stress, anxiety, and worry, but we were forced to do it in a community of people, which meant that like you just said in your story, lockdowns kicked in, you've carried on working, carried on being positive, but you kind of almost subconsciously started to carry some baggage along the way. And I think, and I'm not telling you what your story is, Nick, but I think a contributing factor to that is going to, I don't know because I've experienced it myself, a contributing factor to that is going to be the fact that you're not really talking to anybody other than being Nick and being the professional that you are, and maybe your partner or whatever else, but you're not really got the tribe around you that's looking after you, that's developing you, because you've been removed from that. Now, I think we need that. I don't think humans can thrive without that aspect. Even like the Buddha, if you're going to argue and say the highest realized person in the world spent years and years and years sitting in meditation, not with other people. True, but what did he do with it? He brought it all back and wanted to be with other people and share it and build a community. So even the most enlightened person in the world needs that tribal community aspect. And this is why I think businesses are the engagement, well-being, and health solution, not the problem. Businesses see that they've got to deal with this problem. Like you're the solution, man. Like, people need to be around people. They need to have a goal that they have to work towards. They need to be developed and they need to be supported. People have also got the option not to do that and just avoid it and stay comfortable. Okay, yeah. But when they come into a job, that's an environment where you can force all of those things to happen in a positive way. Okay, you can give them goals that they need to work towards. You can give them the goal of the business. You can give them a community of people that support them and have got their back. You can give them personal goals. You can push them and test them in a way that's developmental, not just get on with this, go away and crumble. Like you've got this, and that forces them to encounter all this negative stuff that they've got in their head. But it forces them to overcome it and progress. That's why I think businesses are the solution, because without that, as we're seeing with many youth of today, and as many of us have experienced over lockdown, we can just stay comfortable and remove the bits of life that we don't like, and that just leads to more poor mental health, which is it's a paradox, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and you're quite right. Is that because people that know me know, and I'm an introvert by the nature of I recharge in my own company, so there's a certain element of that. There was a lot of good that happened throughout that period as well. But you're quite right. Actually, the self-awareness piece for me was knowing that I did need to reach out to somebody. And again, I've been very open about this, that I engaged with a counsellor. And for most of last year, I was actually going through the counselling and kind of therapy process. And that really, really helped, because the context is different, isn't it? I think if you are in lockdown with somebody really, really close to you, the context is different. So it's quite hard to be, and especially if you're trying to support and kind of be positive for the other person as well. So what I found was actually, interestingly, that over the past couple of years, that I would say even kind of like personal relationships, like friendships, have been quite, what's the best word? Up and down. That kind of, I would say I lost more friends over the past couple of years than I have done before. Not fatally, thankfully, but but also gain more friends than I have done over the past couple of years and I have done before. And I think there's been very changeable, going back to that change thing again, where a lot of people, either their priorities have changed or they're acting maybe from a position of fear. From my sense, I've kind of lost sense of what normal actually was in that sense. And even down to things like those kind of quizzes we were doing with everybody, even after a while, it just become another kind of bit of a screen time thing. So all of these things kind of meant actually that I was, even as somebody in this space, I was reaching out less than I would have before, because I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to go with that and who I wanted to share that with, because everyone else was in a different place too, and you weren't quite sure. I would say I probably only got maybe 2 or 3 very, very close friends that I would reach out to and actually kind of speak to myself. So yeah, it is an interesting one. Reaching out is really important. What I found was re-engaging with counselling and therapy, and actually even speaking about that publicly, that's really helped too. Because not only does it take the taboo away, especially as a man, I think not exclusively with men, but especially with men, there's a real challenge around this stuff. And again, that really nicely leads me on to the point of, I know that process had worked for me when it felt like that kind of weight had lifted, and it came from reaching that point of acceptance. And this is what I mentioned with Julie last episode, and the one that I lined you up for, because this is a theme I really wanted to discuss with you. And I think people that have listened to this episode so far will know why. I love our conversations. I think we go really great places. The power of acceptance, to fully accept everything that's gone before, good, bad, perceived failure, screw-ups, all the things that we've done wrong along the way. Every twist and turn and direction change has led to exactly where we are today. However, it's what you do next that counts. And I think that's the bit that we all get wrong. And that's the bit I was getting wrong for a long time. I felt that because things have happened a certain way before, they were going to happen a certain way in future. And again, therefore, we ring fence those kind of opportunities or whatever, those relationships. And therefore, it puts another comfort zone around us, doesn't it? So how important has acceptance been in your journey, especially going through the things that you've experienced?
It's something that you are always learning about acceptance. I mean, it's funny because I'm reading a book at the moment called Personality Isn't Permanent by Benjamin Hardy, psychologist, PhD.
Some good recommendations coming through here as well. So I'll put all the links to these books in the bio as well.
One of my favorite books, and I haven't even finished it. I absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. And he talks about exactly this, and he references Carol Dweck and growth, growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And I also teach ACT, to businesses, acceptance, commitment, therapy, which sounds very clinical, but it's psychological skills. And that's referenced in The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris. And it's all the same message, it's the same. It's really interesting for me because I started my spiritual journey as such, and started my turning point of going from being a lost youth that just wanted to drink and do the things that young lads do, to actually having some direction and purpose in my life was by reading Buddhism and the Dalai Lama. So I started with teachings from 2,500 years ago. And then all the stuff I read now, the vast majority of the stuff I read now confirms what was taught back then. And you start to hear repetitive stories and you start to hear the same things. And it's, once you hear things like 5-10 times, you're like, okay, we need to be making this a thing. This is the solutions to most of our problems. And one of those repetitive messages is acceptance. It's taught in the foundations of Buddhism. It's taught in ACT. It's taught by psychologists today. It's taught by mental health specialists. It's the fundamental. It's one of the fundamental components of being a healthy, happy, functioning human. And I think we've developed society and culture in a way that encourages people not to do that, especially men, but all of us. So it's vital. And for me, I mean, I'll be really honest. I was struggling with my mental health, and I had a psychologist and counsellor in lockdown as well, bearing in mind that I'm an introvert. So I thought a lot of lockdown was great, but I was also developing some issues. And I had bearing in mind I've spent time on monasteries, a lot of time on monasteries. I don't know how many hours and days I've spent in meditation and studying Buddhism, and I've learned this stuff. And then I was really struggling, and my psychologist said to me, you need to read The Happiness Trap, written by Russ Harris, which introduces you to acceptance commitment therapy, because your problem is, and this is why I own Better Happy as well. She said, your problem is that you are still telling yourself it's a bad thing when you're not happy. And even though I logically knew this, I subconsciously was doing that. And she really kind of hit a chord with me. I was like, yeah, you're right. And I like almost felt like a fraud. I thought, I can't go and do a well-being workshop if I'm not feeling happy. You know, I'm a fraud. I should be feeling happy most of the time. I should be limiting the amount of time that I don't feel happy by taking positive action. And that was leading to me feeling miserable. And once I was able to get past that and like have this acceptance around that I don't have to be happy all the time, that transformed me greatly, especially psychologically. And then the stuff with Benjamin Hardy, who talks, he has a dig against personality profiling because he's like, you know, this convinces us that we are a certain way, and that's the way it's always going to be because of what's happened to us in our life. And he's like, but it's not true. You know, like you can actually change your personality. You can change all aspects of yourself. And again, it just comes from accepting that things have happened to you in the past. You've been a certain way. You've done certain things that you might not be proud of. You might regret. You've also done things that you absolutely love and you're very proud of. And that if you dwell on that, you just live a life stuck in a bad place. And we have to have this acceptance component. Acceptance commitment theory. Accept that you're not going to feel happy all the time, that your life's been the way it has, and that things have happened, and commit to what you want to become. Like, just accept that it's there. Stop dwelling on it. The more energy you give it, the more time you spend kind of not moving, not developing.
If it's such a crucial thing, why do we find it one of the most difficult things to achieve?
Being healthy is one of the most important things in life. Why do we find that so difficult to achieve? You know, this is a deep probably societal problem. It goes into politics, it goes into culture. We're a capitalist society which has brought about innumerable benefits and increased the quality of life of more people than we've ever seen before. But it also presents its challenges, which we're seeing now. So I'm not going to stand there and say, you know, we shouldn't be capitalists, we shouldn't place value on material things, because that's a stupid thing to say, because it's brought a lot of benefits as well.
Pull up a chair, ladies and gents. It's going to be a 9-hour final episode. We've got a lot of rabbit holes to go down.
But with modern technology and with capitalism and with money and with the internet and all the nice things that it brings along with it, it brings new challenges. And, you know, societally, we put this emphasis on them. We have done historically on the man being the strong kind of guy that goes out and leads and brings in the money. And then so you've got generations of fathers and grandfathers that have told their sons, like, get on with it, you know, shut up and put up, men don't show emotions, because society was told them that's what the man needs to be. But then you go and live in different cultures and you realize it's quite different. So it's all embedded in our history. It's cultural, it's societal, and it just passes down into our subconscious. There's songs, boys don't cry, you know. there's all big boys don't cry. There's all of this stuff, isn't there? So, and in a kind of the Remington way, that you liked it so much you bought the company. You're now an ACT practitioner. How does it actually look when you work with clients? What's the kind of process in terms of like duration and what you do, and how do people engage with it, that kind of stuff? Yeah, so our main preferred method is 3 separate workshops with a month in between, because it's all well and good doing the theory. You want to go and practice. They're like an hour, 90 minutes. And you talk about the three pillars of psychological well-being. There's lots of different models. So some psychologists, this is created by very renowned psychologists, but some will say, you know, I prefer this method, whatever. I found that this works exceptionally well. So the 3 pillars are the noticing pillar. That's the central pillar. So that's the mindful. That's being aware of what's going on in your mind. Instead of just living it, it's like being aware. So instead of me waking up and feeling miserable and living that, it's like, I notice I feel miserable today. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the active column, which is identifying your values and what you want to move towards in life, because that takes effort. It's your goals. You know, what's most important to me? Who do I want to be? And then your third pillar is the open pillar. And this is about skillfully relating to the world within. So it's like, you know, the first session, we're like, oh yeah, you get all this negative self-talk. That's part of being a human, and it's never going away. And they're like, oh, well, that's nice to know, because we actually get the groups to share the negative self-talk. And that's really powerful, because you notice nobody wants to admit it, because we all think it's just me. Oh, it's just me that thinks like this. We all think that. And then when you get one person, I normally start by sharing mine, and they're like, well, this guy standing up in front talking all confidently has all these thoughts. And I'm like, they're genuine. Like, these are thoughts I've had in the last few days. And then they're like, oh, and then somebody else will share some of the negative self-talk that they've got. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, well, I have this. And then you'll see everybody in the room start to go, well, so do I. And it's like this, it's probably a massive part of the value in what you do in your days as well, because it makes people realize that, oh, it's not just me. All this, it's part of this negative self-talk, because I tell myself it's just me, I'm flawed, there's something wrong with me, it's because of my childhood, it's because of that situation, or when that person was horrible to me. And when you do it with other people, they're like, wow, that's all of us. But then they're like, all right, but what do we do about it? So then
you're not just doing that, you're encouraging people to ask better questions of themselves.
Yeah, exactly that. It's all the same stuff when you come down to it. Like, I see you and I hear your story, and it's about you were you're putting so much pressure on yourself, and you were stressed, and you had all this anxiety building up. And actually, I'm very quickly paraphrasing your story here. And then one day it got so bad that you decided to, you didn't decide, you had no choice. You had to talk about it to a group of business people, and you felt this weight lift off your shoulders, and that led to you kind of like completely transforming as a person. And you see a lot of inspirational kind of coaches and figures, and a lot of them will talk about this defining moment where they stopped trying to be someone they weren't. They stopped holding on to all their stuff, and they just started to be open and honest, and then it transformed them. And a lot of what we do in the businesses is just go and tell people that that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. Like, got to accept it's okay to be negative. We've all got it. If you just focus on that, it gets worse. We actually use a thing called the passengers on the bus analogy. Then we're like, okay, so trying to get those negative self-voice, trying to get rid of it or hating it makes it worse. So let's accept that it's there. Let's identify what we want to move towards, so that we've got this kind of goal, and let's use some funny little tactics that are psychologically developed to create a healthier relationship with this. And if anybody's listening, they're like, well, what is that? How do I, it's no complex, there's no magic formula. It's things like, and this is developed by psychologists, recognize the negative self-talk that you get and see if there's a theme and attach a name to that. So I have the critical corporal. I have this part of me that's very critical. I'm ex-military, and I want to spot anything that goes potentially wrong. I want all of my posters to be perfectly straight, and I want my slides to be neat. And that can have its benefits, but it can also mean that a lot of the time I'm being a dick to my partner because I'm being critical about everything. I'm being a dick to myself, and I'm making my life miserable. And when I give it that name, the critical corporal, instead of just it kicking in and me doing it, I'm like, oh, critical corporal's back. It creates distance between you and the thought and the stream of thoughts. It helps you start to realize that I'm not critical. I just have this voice that can be critical, and these thoughts that can be critical that pop up, and I've got the option to ignore them. Giving Disney voices to the negative self-talk. There's lots of different things you can do to dissipate the impact of that negative self-talk.
Do you work one-to-one with people as well?
I do, not a lot. I do more group stuff.
Okay. And you mentioned that you incorporate your personal kind of experiences and thoughts into your workshops, and I guess that's what kind of really emotionally buys people into you, because they kind of feel, and I'm assuming, because I absolutely feel this, that people that are listening and watching this right now will actually feel what you're talking about, not just hear you, but they'll feel what you're talking about. Yeah. Your personal story, your experiences, is this something you share as a speaker, for example?
Yeah, I consciously don't do a lot of one-to-one, because I think the magic is in the group. I think humans need humans. Now, we need one-to-one a lot of times. I have one-to-one sessions for myself as well, but I actually think a lot of poor mental health can be solved in the groups or resolved early. I think we need to do more promoting positive mental health, not just reacting to poor mental health. And yeah, I do talks, and the key thing around the talk is trying to get people to understand this, that business isn't a problem. It's actually probably one of the best places to solve this problem. It's an opportunity. And actually, if we just, all of us as individuals and as groups and as families and as teams and businesses, if just by getting a bit of a better understanding around what the challenges that we face, we can all start doing something about it instead of all living in these areas that you and I have spent too much time in, where we don't recognize the problem, we're living the symptoms, and we just go for too long without being able to do anything about it, because nobody's made it clear to us that, yeah, you are really anxious and really stressed because of this, and you're not talking, you've got loads of things to worry about, you're on your own, you're isolated, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But if more of us just talked about that, then the world would be a much better place.
Awesome. Absolutely agree. Big hug to that. In terms of, we've spoken about what's before, we've spoken about where you are now. What's next for Mike Jones?
What's next? I truly believe that by improving employee engagement and employee well-being, which is just what we're talking about, but in the business place, that the world will be a better place. I think when people are happy, in the context of happy that we've talked about, they contribute to the world. I think when we're unhappy, chronically unhappy or unwell, we take from the world. We need more stuff by and large. And I think that we've all got within us the traits, the tools, the drive to go make the world a better place. We just need to make sure that people are supporting us and showing us the way, and that we're in the right environments to do so. And I think that not only will businesses rapidly grow by making engagement and well-being a priority, they'll make the world a better place, because naturally their clients will want to work towards meaningful things, and all of their clients and all of their customers will go away and want to do positive things as well. So I'm just going to keep trying to change as many businesses as possible and change as many employees' lives within the businesses as possible, and see what major things we can make happen.
Amazing. Love that. And I do encourage everybody to reach out and connect with Mike. His links and stuff are in the bio. But the question I like to ask everybody, and for the final time, season 4, I am the new MC, the new MC of the O2 Arena in London. 20,000 people have paid their hard-earned money to come and hear you do your thing. You're kicking back in the green room, sipping a Prosecco or a beer, whatever your typical choice is, and your walk-on music kicks in, that song that motivates you, that gets you at peak state, that lifts you, ready to perform. Mike Jones, what would your song be?
I can't remember the name of the artist, but the song's called Generator, and it starts with, I get a record player and a generator, generate the music that makes you feel better. And basically it goes into like, I don't live in poverty, I ain't got a lot of money, but I've got a healthy body, and it's all about appreciating life, what it is, and it's very upbeat and puts you in a good mood. So
of all the times I've asked that question, and there's like thousands of times, that's the first time that song's been recommended. So this and every other choice from every other guest of season 4 will be on a playlist coming your way very, very soon. But for now, Mike Jones, big round of applause. What an amazing guest. I know there's at least another episode in us. So stay tuned for Mike coming back at future season. Hopefully he'll grace us with his presence and donate his busy time. But for now, big thank you for being on the show, Mike. Any parting words of wisdom?
Prioritize yourself, read lots of books, and do what makes you happy.
Love that. What a beautiful way to wrap up the show and the season. So for everybody else, thank you so much for being part of the journey for this season. Season 5 will be coming your way in September of this year, 2022. I have some amazing guests lined up already from lots of different walks of life and stuff, as per usual. So stay subscribed, keep on sharing the love, and I'll see you again very soon. Take care, have an amazing summer, and I'll catch you again later in the year. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. Do hit the like button and subscribe to stay tuned for future episodes. Published every Monday and available through YouTube or the podcast platform of your choice. See you next week.